Gina DeLuca here. All right, I am set up for a straight pour, sticking with the gemstone theme. I did an abalone inspired pour, and now I'm going to do a Mexican fire agate. And I did one of these on a smaller canvas, and it was one of the favorite pours I've ever done. I actually have a beautiful Mexican fire agate stone. It kind of looks like dragon scales almost. It's this nice rich brown color with gold and green and copper coming up through that. It looks like bubbles, and it lends itself perfectly to be the inspiration for a straight pour. The colors that we're working with today, this brown, is a mixture of the Artist Loft Burnt Sienna and the raw Umber. It makes a lovely chocolatey color. And I've covered my sides already with the straight paint, just because straight pours can be thin, and sometimes you don't get the best coverage on the sides. This is a 20 by 20 gallery rack canvas. And then I have the Decoart Americana Decor Metallics in copper, emerald, and 24 karat gold. They are basically guaranteed cell makers. If you are not getting cells with those, you're probably going too thick or using the wrong background color, which would be this base coat color. This is the base coat, this is the background. They're mixed the same. I just needed a little bit extra. So these paints are mixed, 1 part paint to 2 parts Floetrol. That mixture is then thinned with my concoction of 90% water, 10% Floetrol. And the reason I use this is it lessens the risk of over thinning, and it blends a lot more easily than just straight water. Less of a risk of breaking those polymer bonds. The consistency that we're working with, it is about a 2.5 on my consistency scale, close to a 3, between a 2 and a 3. It is making a mound on top of a mound, but it does disappear rather quickly. Before we get started, have you seen the Fluid Art inspiration cards? If you have, you can fast forward about a minute, but if you have not, what we have are 52 cards. There are 42 technique cards, and each technique card has an associated video on the YouTube that gives you all of the information that you need that I cannot possibly fit on one of these cards. The consistency, the exact colors that I used, the pouring medium, and how to do it. This is the picture of the video, or the painting that's in that particular video. This box here has a tip for that particular technique. And then here at the bottom, you have the color palette that was used in that particular painting. There are also 8 bonus color palette cards. Each one has 5 color palettes. You can use some of the colors, use all of the colors, mix and match the bonus palette cards with the technique cards, and you have more combinations than you could ever paint in a lifetime. And they can also be used for crochet, beadwork, anything that requires choosing colors. These are available at my website, ginadeluca.net, and now also available at amazon.com. If you do happen to purchase the cards through Amazon, please do leave feedback. Most people don't leave feedback. It's like 1% of people leave feedback, and they're more likely to leave feedback if they're unhappy. So if you order from Amazon, and that's not just from me, if you order from Amazon in general and you're happy with the product, please do leave a feedback for the seller, because Amazon is very, very big on those algorithms. And if your numbers go down, they start hiding you. And sometimes it is of no fault of your own. I got a negative feedback because the paint spilled in the box. And I'm like, I don't sell paints. But they left me the negative feedback. So yeah, that's what happens on the Amazon. So now we're going to lay down our base coat. The reason that we lay down a base coat, you want your paints to be able to slide around your canvas with ease. If you don't put down a base coat, something has to stick to that canvas, right? So it's going to wind up being the paint that you pour if you don't lay down a base coat, because something has to stick to the canvas. And what happens is the paint will roll over top of itself. This will also happen if you tilt too quickly and you're not allowing the base coat to do its job. And then what happens when it's rolling over top of itself is you lose your composition, and you can lose your cells. And I know that this poured paint looks a lot lighter than the paint that is dried. This is what color it will be when it dries. It is the Floetrol that is making it appear lighter, because Floetrol is white when it's wet, but it dries clear. So if you have had issues with your paints drying much darker than what it was in the cup, that is probably what it is if you're using Floetrol, and you just need to take that into account and make your paints a bit lighter if you want them to be lighter. Just add a bit of that titanium white to it. Sometimes all you need is just a tiny, tiny bit and it will lighten it up. I will do that sometimes with the dioxazine purple, because that dries very, very dark. And if I want it to look like a bright purple, I will add some white to it. If I want it to look almost black, I just leave it as is. And after it's poured, it will appear very bright, but then it dries dark. All right, my base coat is down. I'm going to give this a torch, because you get bubbles even just from putting down your base coat. And if you don't pop them now, they will come up later through your pour. So you want to try to eliminate as much of that as possible. That is why I use a base coat that is the same color as something in my pour. Particularly with a straight pour, I will make it the same color as the background color for the straight pour. If I were to use white and that white popped up through these paints, it would look weird, because there's no white in my painting. I am going to use a regular cup. The past couple paintings that I've done using the regular cup have turned out pretty cool, so we're going to see what happens with this particular combination. Always make sure that you check your consistency before you put it in your cup. Sauce can thicken upon standing. So starting with that background color, and I call it the background color because it's the color that falls to the background when these cell makers do what they do. It feels like the cell makers are in the foreground, and then your background color is just the lacing in between them. Sometimes it will just completely disappear. Pouring from up high because I want these to blend. I want them to sink, especially. A good sign when you're using your paints is if they sink when you're putting them in the cup. That is a good sign that they may sell. Again, from up high, allowing it to sink. Another good reason to paint your sides, especially if you're using a custom blended color. Say I didn't paint the sides and it was looking like the canvas is showing through. Trying to mix this exact color again is a challenge. It's just easier to make sure that it is the way that you want it right from the get-go. Okay, and I have some of this left over, and I'm just going to put that on top. Those paints just want to come through. They want to make the cells. And one of the things that I really like about Floetrol is one of its uses, you know, before it was discovered you could use it for pouring, is you add it to your paints to get rid of the brush strokes. It kind of helps level the paint. So when I'm using it in a base coat, I get a nice smooth base coat. That is a little bit too of the technique that I use with that putty knife. I used to own a bakery, so I know how to ice cakes. So that's kind of part of it. Okay, you can see those cells are popping up through that, even though I put a whole bunch on top. All right, let's make a mess, shall we? A little harder to get a Fibonacci going without the handle, but I'm just trying to twist the cup a bit just to give some variety in where the cells are. Pouring slower and closer as it gets towards the center. And points off for the dismount. I have a harder time on the dismount with the regular cups. That is probably because I have no depth perception. I am legally blind in my left eye. Just going to take my trusty skewer and just give that a little swirl to clean up that center. If you get points off for your dismount, don't fret. You can fix it. Okay, as you can see, cells. The cells are happening. I'm going to pop these bubbles, lots and lots of bubbles in straight pours. It is just the nature of the beast. But very often when you're popping these bubbles, if the paint that is holding the bubble is like in a layer that is below the surface layer, it will often bring a bit of that paint with it, like these little tiny cells. But as I let that sit, those cells will get bigger. And then when I stretch it, they will grow even more. I would say I would allow at least 3 to 5 minutes of letting this sit before tilting it to allow as many of the cells to develop as possible. Obviously, I got cells like right away. But these, what happens here, you get these little cells that pop up and they become Boulder cells if you stretch them. If I were to stretch it right now, I would still get these little cells, but they would be more uniform. I call them pop-up cells. Some people call them pearl cells. But definitely give it a chance to develop before you tilt your straight bore. Patience. If I could scream it at you, I would. Patience is so, so important with this particular technique. You know, and if you're trying this and you're not getting the same results, are you doing everything exactly the same? It is so important. You know, once you master the technique, then you can start branching out and playing with your own colors. But using Floetrol, using these particular paints, because I've already tested these paints before, and I know what paints work together and which ones don't. And allowing it to sit, making sure your canvas is big enough, because if you try this on an 8x8, you're not really going to get the same kind of result. Using the same kind of cups, all of that stuff makes a difference. And if you vary one thing and don't get the same result, go back and do it exactly the same and see what happens. Once upon a time, when my first, when my first 2 straight pours came out, number 15 and 16, there was an artist, I guess, who had tried like 7 times to recreate it and couldn't recreate it. And they put up a video saying that I was a fraud and I was lying to my audience and whatnot. But they were using glue. They were using different brand paints, and they were doing it on like a 5x7 canvas and expecting to get the same results as I got on my 24x30 inch canvas. And it literally, nothing that they did was the same. The consistency was very thick. None of it was the same. So other people were eventually able to recreate it, and that kind of put the kibosh on, you know, was I lying to my audience? No, I'm not lying. I show you everything that I do. I show you everything that I use. I have no secrets. Well, none regarding painting anyway. But just try everything exactly the same, as close as you can get. And if you're using everything exactly the same and you're still not getting that result, go thinner. You may think you're already too thin, go thinner. I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, if you're using all of the same stuff and getting a different result, it is probably your consistency. And if it's not your consistency, it's your patience. You're doing everything too quickly. Okay. I think I've talked enough, and this is ready to be tilted. As the Massey boys say, it's tilting time. So I am going to come to this corner first, closest to me. This is a lot of paint. Always bring the weight of your paint back to center before you change directions. This will help maintain your composition and the weight of your paint is going to be where the paint is moving the fastest. That's the easiest way to tell. And coming back to center. And if you are mindful of the weight of your paint, you can almost make corners. You can't get a 90-degree corner, but you can get 90-degree lines. And one more corner. Patience, patience, patience. Especially when you get to that last corner, the paint's going to be moving slower. You've already stretched it out and tilted off quite a bit of the weight of your paint. If you start seeing wavy lines, you are going too quickly. Slow it down. Even as slow as I tilt, I have to tell myself to slow down sometimes. And as I stretch, more cells will pop up, particularly along the edges that have been stretched heavily. That's why sometimes you get those little pop-up cells or pearl cells along the edge, even if you didn't want them. And I do want them here. I want them to pop up because that's kind of how the stone looks. So now I'm giving this side a good stretch now. But I'm not tilting anything more off of the side that's closest to me. Just stretching. Bringing the weight back to center. I don't want it perfectly centered, my focal point, but I don't want all my weight sitting on the edge either. All right, so as you can see, I have some of these pop-up cells coming up on these edges. It will continue to do that. Okay, I am going to let this sit. I'm going to clean up and then I'm going to bring you in for a close-up. So far, I love it. I love these colors together. It glows. This painting is glowing. These paints are magical. The Decoart Metallics. If you want to get some of these, I am now a Decoart affiliate, so there is a link in the description box. And they have all of the colors on their website. If you go to the store, it's a very limited selection. When I went on the website and I saw all the colors that they had on there, I was like, oh my goodness gracious. I have a lot of shopping to do. Because they're usually out of my favorite colors at the store. 24 karat gold is very hard to find, but they usually have it on their website. So if you use that link in the description box, I make a small commission at no additional cost to you. It really helps me out. All of those little things, the Amazon and the Blick and Arteza, you know, pennies add up to dollars. You know what I'm saying? All right. This is going to do what it's going to do. I'm going to clean up, bring you in for a close-up. Back in a few. Okay, here it is. Look at this baby glow. Would you look at that? I mean, just look at it. I love these colors together. I will show this when it's dry because I didn't have the opportunity to let it sit as long as I normally would because I'm in a time crunch today. And that brown will dry darker and will give a bit more contrast, and I want to show that. So do check out the next video. I will show the dried results of this and possibly a couple of others. But usually if something changes dramatically, I will show it, but typically that does not happen. But this one will look different when that brown is dry and I may get some more cells popping up. But yeah, I mean, come on, look at that. These Decoart paints are magic. If they ever discontinue this line, I may actually cry. I will hold a protest. But there it is. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed. Oh, that's the fire crackling in the background. We're expecting a very big snowstorm. But I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do like, share, and subscribe and all that stuff. Keep me afloat in the algorithms. That looks like an eye in that one cell there. Also in the description box, do check out the links for my affiliates, Decoart, Blick, Amazon, Arteza. Anything that you purchase, if you enter through those links, I will receive a small commission of it, no additional cost to you. There is my PayPal tip jar if you feel so inclined. Not expected, but greatly appreciate it. And also in the description box, you will find the link to our Facebook group, Go Make Some Art. Join us there, post your masterpieces, ask your questions, get some inspiration. And I think that is it for me today. I hope you all have a beautiful day. Now go make some art.